Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Quantum Alignment Show. We have Leslie vanWinkle with us today, who will be teaching. We're so happy to have her, and I will let her introduce the topic for today. And if you have any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat, both on Zoom and live on Facebook, and we're happy you've joined us.
Okay, so you are not talking anymore. You're muted. Hi, everybody. I'm Leslie. Thank you for joining me. I'm thrilled to be able to share what I do know, what little I know, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. So we're going to talk about creating healthy boundaries in spite of your openness. I'm assuming a lot of you who are signed in today are dealing with open centers, so you're in the right place at the right time with the right person. So we're going to talk about the spaces that we have to protect ourselves and the spaces that people invade. Like, in other words, like, where do you end and I begin? So we're just going to jump right in here. My name is Leslie vanWinkle. I'm a reflector with a 4-6 profile, and I'm long past 50, so I'm in the mentorship stage. My purpose on the planet is to wake people up, to prepare them for the shifts that we are already in. And I'm a human design specialist and transformation coach. I'm a mystic, empath, and multisensory intuitive. Say that really, really fast for about 3 times. I'm an author, speaker, and a jack of many trades. But basically, I'm a wise woman with a lot of decades of wisdom, and it's time for me to start sharing that. So that's what I'm doing. And you are here today because you're thinking that maybe you can't settle on what you want to do, be, or have, and maybe your time, energy, and resources seem to kind of disappear, or you give them away to other people, and you want to stop having those experiences. You want to save more of yourself for yourself. So we're going to talk about ways of doing that. So what we're going to cover, we're going to talk about boundaries. How do we form them? How human design reveals vulnerabilities and tendencies. This is incredibly valuable information, and when I first discovered I was a reflector, the world just made sense, and I wanted to share some of that insight with you. We're going to talk about 3 energy centers that contribute to learned boundary infractions, and I'll describe what that is in a little bit. And then we're going to end with some strategies to retrain people how to treat you. We'll just touch on that because it's a big topic and we can't get into it all today, but we'll talk about it. So what are boundaries and why are they important? Well, a boundary is a line that says this is me and that is you. Boundaries protect our own self-interest. It helps us contain who we are. So it's not just keeping other people out, it's actually containing our own power. So boundaries do deflect invading influences, and those of us with a lot of open centers have probably lived our entire lives being impacted by invading influences and not aware of it. So we'll find some ways that that's been showing up for you. So the types of personal boundaries that we're going to talk about are physical. Now we all know about that. When someone stands too close, you don't want to be, you move away or something like that. Or if they're too loud and verbose, you kind of stand back. It's how well you treat your body temple as well, how well you take care of yourself. It's your comfort zone. It also has to do with your possessions, the things that you own and keep to yourself, or whether you feel that you need to share everything. We have sexual boundaries. This is the comfort zone, who can touch you, who can't. We have emotional ones that have to do with our privacy, our personal information, and our thresholds, or what we think is impertinent questions that we may feel uncomfortable with. How much me time we take to take care of ourselves, and how much emotional energy is too much. We have mental boundaries that have to do with our beliefs and our self-identity and the expectations. And these can be impacted because other people can impose their expectations on us, and we can also limit our expectations, and those are boundaries that we place on ourselves. We have spiritual boundaries. It has to do with our degree of self-respect, self-care, self-love, and self-interest, and self-purpose too. So how balanced is your life? Are you working and playing and resting? Do you have a creative expression of some kind? It has to do with your social connections, because we're all one, and so your degree of spiritual connection has to do with how well you interact with people on a real basis. And then also whatever connection you have to whatever supreme power it is that you have, that you turn to when you are seeking some insights. Right now, I'm going to be your supreme power because I'm going to give you some insights. How about that? So the value of having healthy boundaries are that they are instructions to people on how to treat you. Healthy boundaries, they empower you to have more confidence in self-direction. They give you clarity around your self-identity. And they are your conviction to your own values and to your own purpose. And they have to do with your commitment to self-interest. And you'll understand, I use that term a lot, self-interest, because we tend to think in terms of other people's needs. Open centers often give themselves, we're so intuitive and so empathic that we take on the needs of other people and we lose sight of our own self-interest, and we can harm ourselves. So we are going to visit that idea several times in this show. The price of weak boundaries is we have an inconsistent or non-existent boundaries. We can feel a general sense of lack. It shows up everywhere in your life. You can lack of happiness, lack of self-identity and self-value, self-esteem. We can feel like failures all the time. We have a lack of confidence. We can lack of personal power. We can have a sense of lack of meaning to what we're doing, or going, what's the purpose? It's like, I'm living here for everybody else. What about me? What about me? So having weak boundaries can really impair our ability to express ourselves, express the person that we came here to be, which is fabulous. You're magnificent. Just no lie. So the truth is that you are a unique expression of spirit. You're loved by life itself. You volunteered to be here. You made the cut. Out of the billions of souls that said, I want to be human, you guys made the cut. So you are absolutely, totally loved and approved. You're pre-approved for anything you want on this planet. And the only thing that's stopping is your own limitations, and those are the boundaries that you place on yourself. So you're deserving of all the good you can possibly accept, and you're powerful beyond measure. Your ability to create what you want is limitless. You are a center of divine operation. And once you get your boundaries working for you, it's much easier for you to access the cosmic law of cause and effect, which is often called the law of attraction. I'm not going to go into the mystic woo-woo stuff too much, but it's the truth. So just trust me there. So how come things maybe don't feel quite right now? You know, maybe life isn't the way you want it to be. You're here because you have some questions or uncertainties about something that's going on for you right now that you're thinking, maybe boundaries are the problem. Maybe I don't have some. You know, as a reflector, I grew up, and I think maybe much of my early childhood, I didn't even know a boundary existed. I didn't know that there was such a thing. And it took quite a bit of adulthood and some late life insight for me to really realize how damaged my boundaries were and how non-existent they were in certain areas. I had been oblivious. So that was part of what human design gave me. It was a real gift to learn, to teach me that I actually had a parameter around who I was, and that it was okay. So we inherit a lot of our boundaries. This is genetic stuff. I'm just going to touch on this a little bit. Basically, humans are social creatures. We're a tribe. We learn how to survive in the tribe. If we don't adhere to the tribe's expectations and the roles that they assign us, we get kicked out, and we have to fend for ourselves against predators. We have to find our own food, our own shelter, and we're likely to get killed. Now, that's the caveman stuff, okay? But we inherit all that. That's DNA that we have been bringing forward for eons. And even now, we are still operating out of those kinds of instincts. These are fear-based survival instincts. We have always been programmed to do what the tribe needs us to do in order to fit into the tribe so that we can stay safe. Now, at one time, we had different people in the tribe who were in charge of hunting and gathering. Others raised the kids. Others were in charge of the healing and spiritual practices. Some of them, you know, were the scouting protection people. They all had a role. There was an expectation and a role that they assumed so that they would fit in. If you didn't fit in, you could get kicked out. So there's a real life-threatening feeling to not fitting in. And when we are working in our nowadays, you know, fast forward a couple of millennia, we are now dealing with the old style programming, fear-based instincts of having to fit in. And when we got a lot of open centers, we intuitively and empathically know what it takes to fit in. So we accommodate people. Okay, so we became hardwired to operate in the world out of fear for our survival, and we still do that. Now, Karen's been talking a lot about eugenics, and it's a fascinating science, and you ought to check it out just because it's interesting. And if you've got an open head, you probably want to get a lot of information. So we become hardwired to rely on other people for our well-being, and we carry this forward. So the eugenics right now is learning that we are carrying the DNA of this early programming, and they kind of identified that they can trace it back at least 14 generations. So you think about all the grandparents that you have inherited their fears and their fears. We got to talk about people who lived through famines and depressions and wars and deluges and natural disasters. There's a lot of reasons we borrowed and have inherited real fears for life-threatening situations. But this day and age, we don't have that kind of stuff so much, but we still have the programming for it. So we're operating out of this fear-based instinctive system, and we create boundaries to protect ourselves so that we can fit into the tribe and stay safe. Okay. So this includes accepting boundary infractions. That's where we get with our families. When we are born, we're born into a family, and that becomes our tribe. We learn the role we are to assume. Are we going to lead or follow? Are we a peacekeeper? Are we going to be the rescuer, the caretaker, the problem solver? Are you going to be the joker, the clown? Are you going to be the daredevil? You know, whatever role you are assigned in your family is one that you kind of adopt, and as an open center with an open identity, you will come to believe that that is your identity. You also take on the identity of your parents, which we'll get to in a minute. These roles can be imposed on us, or we can assume them by default in order to fit in. Just because we're a part of the family does not necessarily mean that we feel included or accepted. We sometimes need to accommodate ourselves so that we are included and feel protected. We learn our interaction patterns. This is how we communicate with people. It's family dynamics. So you learn how to confront people. You learn how to fight or not. You learn how to compete or not. Maybe if you weren't fast enough, you missed out food on the dinner table. There's things that you learn to do in terms of working with other people. We had learned our emotional patterns. You came up from a family with a lot of strife and everybody started their conversations with an argument, then that's how you learned how to communicate. If you had an open emotional center, you probably shut down. So, and were unable to compete at that level. It just isn't natural. We learn how to express our anger or not. We learn how to fight or not. When we learn about boundaries, what's ours and what's ours to keep, this has to do with possessions. Maybe you had to share a room with siblings. Maybe you didn't have your own toys. Maybe somebody kept eating off of your plate. Whatever is yours became part of the tribes if you had really weak boundaries. You learn coping mechanisms. This is where a lot of learned boundary infractions occur. We do whatever it takes to appease people in power because we have a sense of real life threat when we alienate them. We can feel like, literally, like you're going to die if you confront somebody. We learn alliances, how to form them, what to base the criteria on. How do you learn to trust somebody? How do you learn to trust your own instincts? So these are all the kinds of imprintings that happen in our families, our tribe of origin. And these lessons, they form our boundaries, what we will allow and what we don't allow. So what we learn, what we can say, what we can have, who we can be, and who has power over us, who we can trust, and if we can trust ourselves. These are limits on our freedom. These are boundaries that we have either been taught to accept or boundaries that we have self-imposed for our own sense of safety. Now, boundaries themselves aren't bad. I mean, they kept you alive. They kept you functioning in your family. But some of them are only based on that circumstance, and they don't really work so well in the real world later on. But when you're a child, you're basically dependent on your family for your well-being. So you will do whatever it takes to stay safe. So identity, feelings, and values. A child's openness can affect their ability to form personal boundaries. We're going to talk about 3 centers today. The G center, which is also the identity center. They can become enmeshed with a parent. Children with this open G center do not have a sense of self. They identify very strongly with a parent or both or a sibling, somebody important in their life, and they will adopt that personality. This kid is really going to have a hard time separating. Going to kindergarten feels like a total abandonment. they get really clingy, and they can find themselves latching on to people in order to feel like they have someone to define them. They have open solar plexus. I'm assuming I'm talking to some reflectors with all of them open, so I'm just going to kind of touch on these. This open solar plexus, you got a kid who's feeling the world. Now, any emotion can be overwhelming. When you got a whole family in one room, or Christmas, or a birthday party or something, you got this kid totally flattened by all the emotions and that are in constant flux. The little kid is rattling around in there and trying to just deal, moment to moment. The open will center has to do with how we value ourselves. And with the kid with the open will center is going to feel like they have to earn their place in the home. They're going to need to prove their worth. If they are not definitely respected and honored in their family, they're going to feel as if they need to earn their place. And that can be a real boundary issue around, because it has to do with self-worth. So when a kid is dealing with its world, it's asking, what does it mean? I mean, they're trying to create meaning out of all the events that they encounter. They need to make sense of the world. And they need to understand the tribe's rules so they can fit in. So the child's perspective is limited to their own experience, very short life so far. Their perspective is based on their sense of self-importance. Everything is about them, how some event affects them. What does it mean to them? They miss context. They don't understand any of the adult emotions, feelings, or motivations that are going on around them. They do not understand the big picture. So they make up stories to give that event some kind of a meaning. The meaning forms their belief system, and this is the way the world works, and this is how I fit into it. Well, a child sees everything as it relates to them, so the meaning they have is going to probably reflect some judgment they make about themselves. For example, if a kid asks his dad for something and the dad yells because I can't afford it, well, the kid's going to get a couple messages. One, he's going to get a dump load of emotion on him, which is going to maybe flatten him, make it difficult to even process it. So get heavily emotionally imprinted by this kind of storm. They do not know that the dad's afraid he's going to lose his job. He's afraid he's going to lose his position as a provider, position in family. They don't know that he's feeling really angry at himself because he feels so helpless. All that kid got was the full brunt of all of those intense adult emotions, so heavy emotional imprinting. And that event is going to be given a meaning. And the kid that might construe that it's not safe to ask for what they want. They may think that they're not worth it. They may learn that they have to do without it. Or they may become cunning and find another way to get it, like ask mom. The boundary that protects their sense of self-worth just got eroded. They got trained to discount their needs and wants. Maybe it was just over some little thing. It doesn't matter. It was the emotional imprinting that gave it meaning. And they can carry this kind of belief about what they are allowed to have, be, or do into their adulthood by lowered expectations and self-limiting boundaries. You can see how this is a false belief. It was just a kid's perspective. It wasn't real. It was just that moment in time. So that one event, the kid got a meaning that had taken into their adulthood that had them limit their expectations for themselves. That's a big boundary infraction. Moving along here. I'm wondering if anybody relates to any of that. A child's meaning leads to, they form their lessons for life out of these meanings that they apply to these events. Lessons form our belief systems, and our belief systems, which may be based on lies, that belief system guides our choices, and our choices shape our life. So, openness skews meaning. There's a plus side to having openness, in that it allows us to absorb and leverage energy, which is really great. And it bestows empathy and understanding, so we become very, very good listeners, understanding people. But the negative side is it can lead to that amplified emotional imprinting. It can be invasive and overwhelming. It can be distracting and misleading, and it can impose a false identity. So we're going to talk about 3 different centers today specifically that deal with these things. So the first one we're going to talk about is the G center. Children with an open center, they absorb others' identities and find it very hard to separate. I already mentioned that. They can adopt expectations that are imposed on them. This has to do with the roles that they are assigned and what they are allowed to have and how well they are supported when they want to deviate from those roles or not. They learn to understand each other. So like I said, they become really good listeners. They may take on the role of the caretaker and caregiver and listener and rescuer just because that's one of their gifts. But it can also become a limiting role. They can adopt the limits on personal space and rights. And this carried into the real world can also impact their sense of self-worth. They can question their lovability. And like I said, if they are not taught or are not given respect for themselves, they may not develop it. It's a real tough one to be able to feel that we are valued, that we have a right to what we want, a right to say our truth, say our words. If we aren't given that opportunity, we can feel as if we don't belong, and that can be real devastating. So, the human design open solar plexus. This one absorbs the emotional payload of the tribe. They can shut down from overload. They become peacemakers and rescuers. They are driven to be nice. They will do whatever it takes to accommodate people to keep the peace. They need harmony. The open center here needs harmony. The will center, this one has to do with values and resources and how we are taught to respect them or have them. So we absorb the values of the family. If you have a family that spends a lot of money or one that doesn't spend a lot of money, you form a value around money and what it's worth. If you have a family that values a lot of caregiving and loving and fun and play, that's one of the values that you absorb. So you get your values from your family. Your self-esteem is based on comparison. Oftentimes with this open will center, we might compare ourselves to siblings, to playmates. As we get into teens, we'll compare ourselves to our peers there. And we get our self-esteem based on how well we match up, measure up. We also develop our self-worth based on our value to the tribe. And here with the Well Center, we can find that we try to overcompensate or overperform in order to earn our place in a tribe. They're under pressure constantly to prove their worth. Over-volunteering, any of those folks? Now you're going to have to go into adulthood, folks. Sorry, you got to leave the nest. Scary thing for open centers. So, but this is a rite of passage, leaving the nest, getting out there. You would form separate identities, interests in first jobs. You get your social networks, your romances get going. You start learning your self-interest and what it takes to survive. You get your first job, like I said. You develop confidence in your abilities. This is one of the crucial pieces of separating, is getting confidence in your own abilities. And this is where the individual authentic self can start to show up, which is wonderful. And they can start forming their boundaries around that self-interest. They are definitely interested in sciences, so they're going to make sure they're taking all those classes, and they're going to hang out with kids who are in that area. They're going to start getting reinforcement and building boundaries that support their self-interest or not. They are asking the big questions. How do they fit in? How are they going to survive? What do they do for money? Who am I to date? Who can I trust? Will anyone love me? What tribe will have me? And if these things are being challenged constantly, the individual with a lot of open centers can go into panic. They go into overwhelm. They're inundated with every kind of influence that's around them. Think about first jobs. Think about going to college. Think about those parties that you went to in your early 20s. Everybody's ideas became yours. Everybody's identities became yours. Everybody's feelings became yours. Who the hell were you? Where were you? We panic. We listen to bad advice. We're influenced by people who don't have our best interests in mind. We make bad choices, have bad experiences. We fall down, fall down, fall down. What's happening here is we've got the young adult with openness will fall into disempowering patterns. Their identity can either become authentic and they develop their own sense of identity, or they can become enmeshed with other people and adopt it. And we'll talk about enmeshment in a minute. With their solar plexus, they are taking on the feelings of the world. You've got people joining the Peace Corps because they want to heal the world, versus their own feelings, which was, I just want to take care of myself and have a nice job and have flowers on my table. Their will center is that they have a challenge around owning their own value. When you get your first job, you take whatever they pay you, right? Okay. Well, as you move along, you may want to be able to get jobs with earn more money. But if you have a feeling of low self-worth, you're never really going to aspire to that. You're not going to really attract it. It's very easy for this open will center to be exploited. I'm sure that anybody with an open will center has been exploited in some manner. The open G center tendencies are we're here to be wise about love, self, and identity. But the thing is, we can know other people. We really struggle with our own identity. We can't discern what's me and what's you. It's all a big blur. And it changes moment to moment, depending on who you're with. We can have a changeable life identity and no direction, or multiple directions, even at the same time. You can feel pulled in multiple places and try to pursue lots of different goals, all different. An example profession, they become a jack of all trades. They can spend a lifetime finding themselves. And the price might be a low self-esteem, sense of failure, because every time we start something and we just don't make it work, we feel like we are a failure. Well, I want to tell you right now that everything that you have done up to this point, every experience you've had has been a success. You came here to live a life, and part of that life was to have experiences. So every single one you had was a success. You learned something from it. And all of those choices and all those experiences have brought you right here to right now, where you're actually starting to question what's important to you. And how can you make what's important to you take form in your life? I want you to really seriously look at any of the past events you have around this kind of stuff, any beliefs you have around failure, and reframe it right now to a success. It's an easy thing. You can do it in an instant. If you've got an open spleen, you can do it right now. The open G center tendencies, they're deeply sensitive, and they have to be in the right place at the right time. And well, because they're picking up everything, and you can see why that's important. They need a lot of boundary time for themselves too. But it can show up by adopting other people's households and tastes. I mean, I was 50 before I even had a household where I wasn't living on top of somebody else's leftovers, because that's what I did. I just would move in, and I would adopt whatever was going on around me, and I would just kind of morph into whatever needed to be done. They can accept unhappy work conditions. Let's not let that happen. The price paid is potential depression, disappointment, health issues. The Open G Center is under pressure to prove their lovability. They struggle to express themselves. They do not, if they have an open throat, they really have a real challenge getting anything started and manifesting things, unless they're hanging out with manifestors or people with defined throats. So the poor boundary shows up. They can morph to fit in. They pursue goals and dreams that belong to other people. They want to be liked. They want the approval. They'll adapt to somebody else's dreams and think that they are their own. They might buy, self-improvement programs or investment programs because the person who was talking about them was so excited and enthused about it that they thought, oh, I can do that too. They borrowed the identity of this person who's successful in this one field, and they borrowed it to the point where they believed that they were that person and could succeed in it as well. That it may not have been a good fit. It could have been a disaster. More times this kind of stuff happens. They doubt their own judgment, and they can become multiple indecisive, which is why if you're a reflector, you've got that 28-day thing, use it, because that's exactly what it's for. The price paid is you can go down rabbit holes of misdirection, and you can go there for years. The OpenG Center has a malleable self-identity. We've already talked about that, and now I want to introduce an idea called enmeshment, which is, it's a psychological term, but I've kind of simpled it down a little bit. Basically, it's an extreme blending of characteristics to the point where there is no separation. It can be involuntary, or it can be voluntary. When it's involuntary, it's when other people impose their ideas and thoughts and opinions on you. They may not be aware of it, or they may be aware of it. In spousal enmeshment, it can lead to abuse when the dominated partner attempts to separate. I won't even get into spousal abuse, but you've heard stories, you've seen movies, you know what that's all about. You know, separating you from your support network, keeping you alone, force-feeding you opinions, ideas, and behaviors. Parental enmeshment imposes expectations and prevents a child from separating into their own identity. This can be, you know, the parent that wants their kid to be a baseball star or to be the star in the musical. The expectation belongs to the parent. The parent enmeshes the child and imposes the expectation on the child. The child absorbs this identity and thinks that that's who they are. Now, it may be a genuine interest or talent, in which case that's fine, but the enmeshment is an imposition on the child by the parent to do it their way. Workplace enmeshment can occur. This sometimes involves the abdication of independent action and thought. Now, workplace enmeshment can be a good thing. You might be in a really good situation where you got a boss you adore, and you voluntarily, you know, take on their characteristics and unwillingly accept their goals and dreams and support it. And maybe it's in alignment with who you are, in which case it's win-win. But if it isn't, if you are simply enmeshed and expected to perform on behalf of this person, and they are not allowing you to express your part of the game, then it's an enmeshment and it's an infraction. So that's a good thing to look at if you're in a job that it does not feel right. Look and see if you are being force-fed your goals. Enmeshment is a boundary infraction. Involuntary enmeshment is when others impose their thoughts. I already talked about that one. Voluntary enmeshment also exists. It can be useful, where you deliberately use your empathy and ability to absorb another person's personality, and you understand and empathize and know someone, and you use it for constructive purposes. And for professionals, there's a lot of professionals who use this skill in a way that is beneficial to everybody. You got a second in command of business who voluntarily takes on the goals, means, and dreams of their boss, and they are really important people, and they find a lot of satisfaction in that role. And they're doing it because they are able to enmesh and basically think on behalf of their boss. It's a good thing. They could be a therapist or counselor, and you already can sense where that can go. I mean, being able to absorb somebody's place where they are, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually even, gives you insight and compassion that is very valuable to them. It makes you very intuitive, and it can help you a lot when you're trying to help them find their next step, to find their next, what needs to be done next, whether it's shedding something or if it's to develop something. It could be a marketer who knows the customer. I'm a copywriter, or was at one time, one of my many jack of all trades. I'm a ghostwriter. I was a ghostwriter. I was a photographer, filmmaker, all kinds of things. But when you know who your audience is, you can empathize who they are, and you can meet their needs. So in a workplace, this can be a useful skill. So don't discount it. It's not all bad. However, there is an issue around enmeshment and intimacy. People think, okay, this is good. When someone imposes their ideas and thoughts on you, then they think they understand you because you're kind of like a little mini-me. But they're only understanding the part of you that is like them. They don't really know who the rest of you is, or even where the core of you is. Because true intimacy is accepting and knowing another person for who they are, their opinions, their values, their likes and dislikes for themselves. You've got a husband is doing this false intimacy. Oh, my wife wants to take a cruise. She doesn't want to take a cruise. You want to take a cruise. Okay? She wants that money put into the garden and back so she can grow her dahlias and win prizes. You know, we think that we know the other person. So enmeshment, when we impose these ideas on other people, we're fooling ourselves and we think that we understand them. Voluntary enmeshment is still a boundary infraction. It can be. And it's a kind of a trick, because when we get somebody's approval, when we allow their personalities to take over us, when we start becoming little me-and-me's, we start getting their approval. Who doesn't love themselves? You know, not to see, oh, they're imitating me. And that feels good. It's a short-term win. We think it's like, okay, we're getting their approval. We're being included. We belong. We fit in. But it's really short-term, because what you've done is you've truncated your own ability to form your own identity, which could be even cooler than theirs if you give yourself a chance. It's a self-imposed boundary infraction. And you're choosing to limit your growth. So what we have here is when we allow our open identity center to default to the personalities that are around us, we are in danger of shortchanging ourselves. It's okay to adopt things that you admire and take on characteristics that benefit you, but it's also important to be aware where they conflict with your own sense of integrity and your own values and your own interests. So that's part of where this identity thing comes on. Separating from enmeshment. Well, first of all, get a human design reading. Figure out who the heck you are, so you at least have a baseline. When I do reflector readings, I always include the incarnation cross. I spend a lot of time on the profile. I look at some of the other channels, but try to stick to the type. But I also have some reports and things that I give how to build your own personal sounding board of directors for your 28-day process. How to learn to discern influencing energies, identifying them, and situations where they occur. Show you how to work with the time. So part of the separating involves identifying the influencer, first of all, and figuring out what traits that you like. What have you adopted? What have you liked? And which ones really feel alien? And then cherry pick the ones that feel correct, because it's possible that they are actually in alignment with who you are. And then practice those ones consciously and shed the others. They probably won't notice too much. The open center, the open G center, the resiliency for this is that they really need to put their self-interest first. This is a life direction issue. And for many of us, we don't really get our life direction clarified until, maybe late 20s, 30s or so. So up to that, it might be just experimentation, especially if you got a lot profile line 3. When you do define your self-interest and your self-direction, it can be in vague forms. It can be a sketch of what you think is right. But you want to start building on that. That's who you are authentically. And once you get that stabilized, you can ask for more of what you want, and it will show up. If you're out of integrity, you can ask all you want, and it won't show up. Okay? So it's important you get that in place. Moving on to the open will center. I've got to keep track of myself here. This is also known as the heart center. It's a motor center for manifestation. It deals with value and self-worth, business and resources, perseverance and discipline. Most people with it open because there's not that. Most of us have it open. 87% of it have this open. We struggle with self-discipline, routines. The people who just go do it, manifestors and stuff like that. Okay, well, or other people who have a defined will, they can go out and just do it. They've got the discipline, the perseverance, and the structure. They know how to keep routines. They'll keep diets. They'll stick up to their exercise routine. They are your marathon runners, but they're only 13% of the population. The rest of us struggle with discipline and routines. We can burn out really easily, and we need to work to rest. That's the rule for the open will center. You got to work, and then you have to rest. And for a reflector or somebody with a lot of open centers like sacral, open root, resting is really important. The open will center is about self-worth, so this person can fall into a lot of self-judgment and comparison games. And they're under pressure to prove their worth. And so to that end, they can overcompensate, overperform. They're vulnerable to exploitation. They under-earn, undercharge. They settle for a lot less than they are worth. I'm hoping some of you are nodding. I can't see you.
You have a lot of people resonating with what you're saying, Leslie.
I'm so glad. This is why
the comments if you like.
So the Open Will Center has a really big lesson. It has to do with how you control your resources. And your resources are your time, your energy, your money, and your talent. And part of the lesson of this Open Will Center is to learn how to make your self-interest your primary priority. To use your time, talent, energy, and money in a way that supports you and why you came here. Now, oh God, I can't name the number of organizations I volunteered for and gave my lifeblood to, how many people I've worked for that I just stripped myself for to be able to deliver and prove my worth. And you know what? I was twice as smart as most of them, and smart and twice as talented as most of them. But I was in a situation, maybe with an open G center, the G, where I accepted their goals as mine, and then I busted my ass to deliver, over-deliver. And I hurt myself. So I don't want you to do that. That's just so much grief. You don't need to do that. So here's a couple strategies. First of all, if you find yourself falling into this situation where you are being exploited and undervalued, underpaid, any of those things, hey. So get it in writing. Whatever it is you're agreeing to, use your 28 days if you need to. Have a back door. Say, excuse me, I'll get back to you. I have to discuss this with my board of directors. Get a back door. Do not commit to something without giving yourself the proper time to decide if this is in your interest. So when you do decide that it's in your interest, get it in writing. Define the scope of work, what is exactly expected, what's going to be delivered, what resources are they going to provide, which ones do you have to provide. Get it in writing. Set market prices and time frames. I used to work in publishing, printing, and they would say you can have it cheap, fast, or good. Pick one. Well, when we are overcompensating and trying to over-deliver, we try to deliver it cheap, fast, and good, and we really break ourselves to do it. You don't want to do that. It's not realistic, and it's not even normal. Okay? So set prices and time frames. And then double it, by the way. Double the time. just no, trust me, double the time. So don't negotiate down or settle. And when you set your price, shut up. If they called you, they want you. Tell them what it's going to cost them to have you. And then shut up. Don't offer them a deal. Don't buy into their story, oh, there might be more work for you later. That's bullshit. Pardon me, but it is. There's no guarantee for anything. This is one time, it's now. This is the deal now. Take it or leave it. And if you leave it, you're going to get a different opportunity. You just told the universe that you were worth more, and it will deliver. Okay? So don't negotiate down. Don't volunteer to do more than they defined. And charge extra for extra work. When all of a sudden they go, oh, by the way, we need an extra promotional trailer for this video. Would you write that for me? And says, sure, that'll be $800. Don't just do it. Charge them. Okay, so the double whammy of the open will and G center. Are you adopting the goals of another and think that they are your own goals? And then you feel compelled to support their dream to prove your worth, even if you are exploited. Watch out for that one. It's getting you from both sides. The open solar plexus tendencies. Ooh, we're running out of time. I better really rush along here. First of all, this is the emotional center. 50% of the population has this open, so 50% of the people are broadcasting their emotions at you at all times. Think about that, okay? You're here to gain emotional wisdom. You're the most creative center, and when it's used correctly, it gives you passion, enthusiasm, clarity, and power. But it's open, and so it is impulsive, and it may not wait for clarity, so use your 28 days if you're a reflector. And if you're not a reflector, use your other strategies. The open solar plexus, we've already covered this. It's empathetic, feels other people's feelings, can be overwhelmed by groups. Okay, I can't stand crowds. I can't deal with them. I give me 5 minutes in a party and I'm on the deck with one person, okay? Confrontations leave this open center very, very vulnerable. They feel the tension. They can shut down really fast. Yelling sends me into full retreat. I shut down. I can't think. Intimate relationships with this open can be really rewarding if you've got the right partner, or highly toxic if you do not, because you're pulling in all of their feelings and emotions. And if they are not healthy, you are going to be in real trouble. And remember, with the open center, everything's coming in. Yeah, it's amplified and gets broadcast out, but it's open. Nothing sticks. It passes right through. So if you are in a situation, truly have an exit strategy. If you are in situations where you know you're going to be in a big group with people, or anything that you anticipate is going to be a little stressful or full of tension, have an exit strategy. Make your phone call you. Have an alarm after 10 minutes after getting into the party. Oh, okay, well, my alarm just went off. I got a call. Leave. Go to the washroom. Get some water. Do something, but have an exit strategy. Have a buddy who will come and get you when you give them a signal. If you can't tolerate the influx and the overload of a large group, you have to be able to get out of it. If you're in a business meeting and you have you're around people you can't necessarily exit, you need to be really well prepared to go in there and know exactly what your baseline is, what you want, and not allow all the other emotions and mental stuff coming in at you to derail you. And if you find yourself in danger of losing your focus, again, have an exit strategy. Excuse me, I've got to go get some water. Or I forgot a report on my desk. Something. Get your person to put you on the agenda early, and then you can get in and out. I can only be here for 10 minutes. I have another appointment. I got a sales call I have to make. So, you think of strategies, how you can protect yourself from overload in big groups. The open solar plexus is under, excuse me, I got a hair in my mouth, is under pressure to be nice. We're so nice. We are the nicest people on the planet, people with open solar plexus. They try to keep everybody happy. They really need harmony. They may acquiesce their own needs in order to keep the peace. This is a biggie. This is a huge boundary infraction. If you have needs that are not being met because you're making everybody else's needs more important, you are hurting yourself. Really, you're doing real damage, not only to your self-worth, but to your sense of value and to your self-love. You're losing self-respect with every single time you give up your power. Putting people first. Yes, we get a lot of pats on the back and we get a lot of rewards and we feel good when we help other people. And that's natural. Part of our role on the planet is to reflect people, and sometimes that can make us be very helpful. So it's a balance. It's a balancing act. Because if we fall into a pattern, especially if it's when we've learned from our family where we are always putting other people first, we are basically making them more important than us. And what's that about? You volunteered. You're just as important as everybody else on this planet. Somebody may have a need that you can serve, but let it just be that nerve. Don't necessarily take on the role of being subservient and being taking care of them all the time. This is where you fall into being a martyr. Who wants to be a martyr? I was a martyr. I'm a recovering martyr. Really happy about that. They can be kind to a fault. Like I said, you can just give yourself away and hurt yourself really badly. You abhor conflict. I already talked about this. You can totally shut down, abdicate your position, or make a full retreat. And they can earn the reputation of being a doormat. But really think about this. Are they just acquiescing because they're weak? Or is it self-protection? When we accommodate other people, we're making them feel better, which makes us feel better, which means we don't hurt. So some of it's self-protection. So don't beat yourself up for this if it's a pattern in yours. It's just something you learned. And anything that was learned can be unlearned. The open solar plexus is a natural rescuer. This is a real biggie. So think about this. You feel their pain, you think it's their pain, so you seek relief for yourself by soothing them. Another way that works is if you feel their pain, you know it's their pain, but you are compelled to relieve it because you need harmony, so you soothe them. It's a real rough pattern to get out of because all of our instincts say, oh, we want people to feel good, we want harmony, we want them to be happy, but you just train them to expect you to solve their problems. You're not here to rescue them from their pain or lessons. If you're a reflector, yes, you are here to reflect it, but you're not here to fix them. When you rescue them, you rob them. You're doing them a disservice because their problems and their pattern that required your help is going to keep showing up until they deal with it. So they can deal with it when it's just like a toothpick nailing them, or they can deal with it when it's a 2x4, or you can keep rescuing them, and at age 30, they have the same problem, and now it's a stainless steel I-beam that hits them on the side, and now you're expected to deal with that one. So until they deal with it themselves, it's going to keep showing up. You do not want to be their go-to person forever. So the open solar plexus strategy for dealing with conflict is anticipate. If you know there's toxic relationships and certain kinds of situations where there's tension, family reunions, I don't know. I get along with my family, but not everybody does. If you know that there are certain kinds of situations that are fraught with tension and potential violence of any kind, anticipate them. Be prepared. Have your exit strategy in place. Know how to get out of it. Know who your allies are. And if possible, try to set the ground rules when everybody is calm. If you know you're going into a discussion with your teenage son about borrowing the car without asking, it's going to be tense, okay? So you need to go in and explain to the people who are going to be in that conversation what the ground rules are. No yelling, no screaming. Soon, we're all going to come out of this with, everybody has to come to the game with an idea for a solution. Be rested and know your own feelings. Be well fed. Don't want your blood sugar dropping in the middle of a conflict. Consider having a neutral party present, have your game plan, and have a least acceptable result. That means this is the least thing that you will settle for. Beyond this, you will not give way. If you're going to be making these kinds of changes, you need to have a plan. So you need to start small. You need to learn to negotiate, expect pushback. Some people will leave. You need to get support from those who believe in your value, and you need to persevere with conviction. Remember, this is your life, not theirs. So what's next? Put human design in your toolbox. If you haven't gotten a reading, you probably ought to do that pretty soon. There's my website, me or somebody else. I love doing readings for reflectors, and you're welcome to sign up with me there. You can join my little community Facebook thing if you want. It's really easy. Human Design for Life Mastery at Facebook. It's really easy to find me. I'm going to be posting some blogs and excerpts from this book that I'm writing called 11th Hour Accelerated Evolution, because that's exactly where we are, folks. Your navigation guide to being human. And I promise it won't be dry at all. It'll be fun. And then the last thing is I'm going to be doing a course, a short course, either 6 or 8 weeks, haven't decided yet, that picks up where this left off. Actually, we'll go over some of it and add more to it. This is the kind of stuff we'll cover. It'll cover all of the centers to some degree and where boundary infractions can occur, and strategies for retraining, not only yourself and how to treat yourself, but other people to treat you. Some strategies to understand what is the underlying belief that you're buying into that is helping you maintain a boundary that's not in your best interest. Think about that. What are you believing about yourself that lets you continue to let your boundaries be eroded? We'll do some exercises to help you really kind of lock onto a couple of things that you know are really true about yourself, that you can use to really start your really strong own self-identity. I mean, I can't create you, but I can help you find a couple of things that really resonate so that you know that those are your go-to places. These values are always true for you. The throat has to do with finding your voice and manifesting. People with an open throat have a really hard time being heard. This is so frustrating, and it's heartbreaking because a lot of times your ideas are the best ones in the room. You could be the smartest one in the room, but you got an open throat and no one hears it. Okay, talk about that. The G center we talked about. Will center we just reviewed. Solar plexus, same thing. Spleen. The spleen's center for our fear gates. Boy, do we carry fear around with us. Some of it's just DNA stuff I talked about earlier on. Some of it is stuff we've learned in our family origin, our tribe. And then when you look at the human design chart, if you have any of those gates activated, there are some really interesting fears that we operate on that are like low-grade operating systems that are constantly trying to tell us what to do. The sacral has to do with drafting physical energy, which is real handy. The root is under pressure to get it all done. And like I said, the head's under pressure to figure it all out. So you got both the head and the root pressure centers. Figure it all out and get it all done. Anybody got an endless to-do list? Okay, yeah, that's where that comes in. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because I think I'm sort of out of time. Is that true, Betsy? I am. She's nodding. So here we go.
You're right on time.
Okay, so I would say if you guys found some of this useful, sit with it. If you're a reflector, think about if you want to pursue any of it. I'm going to do something. I'll probably get some emails out. I don't know. Maybe Karen will help, joint venture me. I don't know. But if you want to keep working on this, drop me an email. And I'll just put you on my little short list of folks that are still interested in learning more about what this is all about. When I put this program together, which is sort of in the works, it's going to be along the lines of what we just did, but it'll be a little deeper, and there'll be some exercises, some interactive stuff. There'll be Q&A, and I'll probably do some one-on-one coaching. So it's be pretty rich value, I think. And if you think it's time for you to look at some of the boundaries that you've allowed to limit yourself and things that are making you unhappy, then, you tuned in because you had a desire for something to be different. So follow that desire. Okay, I think I'm wrapped up.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Yeah, I'll just say you've had a lot of people on here commenting throughout your presentation about how helpful this is. You've had a number of people say they have all 3 of these centers that you've talked about open, and that you're describing their childhood exactly, and that this is such a great framing for them. Yeah, and you've had some people saying, talking about the difference between the open emotional center and the open G and how they can feel similar, which I know is definitely true sometimes with taking on identities and emotional energy. You have a couple of reflectors who've said this is particularly helpful. So yeah, thank you. It sounds like this was really, really resonant. You had a couple of people request the slides, the presentation, and I'm wondering if that's something you'd be willing to share with people. If so, we can.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So maybe you can send those to us, and then when we post the replay of the presentation, we can include a link to these slides as well for people if they want to review the info.
I'll take some of them out, but the crux of some of this stuff I'll leave in there so that there's.
Absolutely. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you, Leslie, for sharing your deep, deep wisdom about what it's like to have open centers, because This is certainly your area of expertise, to be sure, and I got a lot out of it. I have 2 children myself, and so, hearing you talk about, 2 young children, hearing you talk about, the effect of adult energies on children and on their openness is really good for me, and I'm sure for other parents to hear as
Teach them
well.
to respect themselves.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, you can feel free to post them on the Facebook page. You can also email us at karen@quantumalignmentsystem.com. If you want to reach Leslie, you can email her at the email that's on the screen there, or you can email us as well, and I can get your message to Leslie at her email address as well. So
I just fixed a typo on my email. So it's human design 4, the number 4, and then LM for life mastery, because it was just too long,
Yes. Absolutely, SWIM's abbreviations come in
I'd love to
handy.
hear from any of you who are interested in pursuing anything, because like I said, I'm going to put this program together, and it's for you. So I want to we meet.
And it sounds like a brilliant program. And again, if you want to book a reading with Leslie, you can go to her page there. You can also find, I believe you have a practitioner page up on the Quantum Alignment System website as well, right? Yep, so you can find her through the Quantum Alignment System website as well, and she's brilliant, particularly for reflectors, but really for anyone who wants to look at openness or just look at their chart. She's very experienced. So
cool. Looking forward to meeting folks.
Yes, thank you again. I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Okay, we'll follow up with you in a little bit. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.